All right, guys, what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out, I've got a list of parts in the house, and I'm not sure what all little parts and pieces I need to make this carburetor work. What I'm trying to do is use a 600 CFM vacuum secondary Holley, and it's like a main body from another carburetor, a base plate from another carburetor. This is like a bunch of parts, and I'm going to try to put it together and make it work. But I'm turning it into a dual jet plate vacuum secondary, basically. I have a dual line kit here that I bought brand new for a Holley for my hardtop with a liquid filled gauge. It's all brand new stuff. I ended up buying a Demon, so I never did use that. Anyway, at one time I'd bought a rear jet plate conversion kit, and I never did use it. So this is a brand new rear jet plate to go from your, the little clutch head screw plate that goes on these 4160s in the back, because normally they don't have a jet plate, and I am basically converting it to a jet plate. Now the problem is I don't have the bowls for this carburetor, the original ones. All I've got is a pair of bowls here from a double pumper. Well, the problem is the double pumper has dual accelerator pumps. I only need the front one. So what I've decided to do is put a accelerator pump in here and the cover on it, and what I did was I knocked the roll pin out of the arm, and I'm just going to leave it out of it. So it'll still hold gas and everything, but it's obviously not going to work like a double pumper. No linkage and stuff to use it. So I'm going through trying to figure out what I'm going to need. But I had a rebuild kit here for a 600 CFM vacuum secondary, but I know I've probably taken some parts and pieces out of here at one time, so I'm basically trying to figure out what all I need to buy, or put on the parts list basically to see what all I need to buy. I know I need jet plate gaskets and bowl gaskets for sure. I think I have 2 new needles and seats in here, I'm not sure. This kit would have come with 1. And it looks like I only have 1 new one, so I'm going to need 1 more of those. So I'll put that on the list. Anyway, what I'm going to do, I've already cleaned everything up. I had soaked these in Berryman's, and I've got them all cleaned off and blown out. And the rest of the stuff I cleaned up and blew out. But anyway, now it's pretty much ready to go together if I had all the parts. So I'm going to go ahead. I know this is the correct gasket. I matched this up with the one that come off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and at least bolt the main body to the base plate, and try to figure out where all the screws are, and because I've taken it apart and the other carbs and thrown all the hardware in here. So it's going to be a hodgepodge, but it should at the end of the day work. Anyway, let's see how it goes. Alright guys, so I got the little Holley 600 all put together here with the rear jet plate conversion kit and double pumper bowls and all that stuff. I do need some parts to finish this out. I don't have jet plate gaskets, I don't have bowl gaskets. I want to put a brand new power valve in it, and I also need an accelerator pump to put in here. Even though it's not going to be used because this is a vacuum secondary, I need that new one in there to keep the gas from leaking out of the bowl onto the intake, obviously. So anyway, I'm very confident in it. This should be an excellent carburetor. It ended up being made from 3 carburetors, so that is pretty awesome. It actually cleaned up very well, the bowls and everything, and both jet plates are new. The base plate's from a reman that I didn't drive the carb in a month or 2, so I mean it should be a great carb. The whole main body center's new. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about carburetors here, and I'm gearing this toward the guys that may not know about carburetors. I don't consider myself a carb expert, but I do have a lot of experience in Holleys, so I just kind of want to run you through that. Now, I will say right off the bat, a lot of guys are against a Holley because they 9 times out of 10 they have a bog in them, or a dead spot. When you hit the gas, they kind of bog down, then they go. The reason is, every carburetor you buy, a Holley carburetor, pull it out of the box, you've got to tune it to your engine. If you're not a tuning guy, I would say you probably better get an Edelbrock, because you can pretty much stick those on your engine. adjust your air screws right there, and rock and roll. But every time I've ever put an Edelbrock on my cars, my small blocks, they always run just a tinge fat at idle, so they'll end up blackening your spark plugs. So to tone them down, you have to spend, I want to say it's like $70 or $80 or something. It may be more nowadays for a little plastic box like this. This one's actually for a Demon, but it'll be the same thing in, say, Edelbrock. And it has all the jets and the needles and all the crap in it to change out, if I can get this open in one hand. But anyway, so to me, it's just kind of a mess. They both have their good points, no doubt. But even if you don't have tuning experience, there's only one $10 or $15 tool that you need to get this dialed in. And that's a vacuum gauge. You cannot properly tune any carburetor without one of these. And I know there's those old school dudes that they don't even own a vacuum gauge, and they're like, I use my ears. They act like it's a secret voodoo science that they can listen with their ears to tune an air deal. There's no science to it at all. A 5-year-old kid can tune these. All you're doing is listening to your RPM of your engine. You're listening to that engine increase or decrease in RPM. Anybody can do it. It's not voodoo, guys. I'm telling you. Now, I will say this. You can do it that way, and you can get it pretty close. But if you want it dead dialed, both sides of your carburetor perfectly, you'll want to use a vacuum gauge, and all you do is tune it to your highest vacuum rating. And here's why. You can turn this listening to it with your ears only, and you'll think you'll have it dead on. And then when you plug this on in, it might be, 2 or 3 inches off. So, one little half a turn would increase that, and you wouldn't even hear it. So do yourself a favor and buy a vacuum gauge. And I'll tell you this, if you're running a Holley carburetor, you absolutely cannot properly size your power valve to your engine without a vacuum gauge. It's impossible. That is in every Holley book you buy and in their DVD that I have. So anyway, both carburetors have their good and bads. I prefer Holley just because of the tuning capabilities and the more performance. Edelbrock is not a performance-based carburetor. That are the words out of Vic Edelbrock's mouth himself in an interview. These were not designed for a performance carburetor. These were like for the old Mopars. Guys were wanting new carburetors, so that's why he came out with them. They had Carter AFB before that, but pretty much the exact same identical carburetor. Anyway, the thing for me is on these Edelbrocks, I had a brand new 600 on a truck that I took to the midnight drags every 2 weeks in Tulsa for almost a whole season. I raced that truck. It was my daily driver. It had AC. It was a nice show truck. I had a brand new Edelbrock on it. And I bought a 650 vacuum secondary from Summit, and I put that carburetor on there, and I got 4/10 out of my truck. So just from a carburetor change. So that right there will tell you that. But the other thing I noticed is the cam. I had like a 480 or 490 lift cam in that truck, and I could tell the cam sounded bigger with the Holley. And I think it's because it has all these, air bleeds and stuff, and 4-corner idle basically is what it is. So anyway, I prefer the Holley, but you can't really just take one of these out of the box and throw it on and expect it to work. You're going to have that little bog or that hesitation when you nail it. But it is very, very simple to dial it in. What you want to do is you'll start your vehicle and you'll let it get up to temp. If it's an automatic transmission, you have somebody put it in gear and hold a brake. You take a vacuum reading. Whatever that vacuum reading is, you split that number in half. Don't worry about, these power valves, they come in sizes. You can see that right there. It says 6.5, if that's going to show up. Don't worry about the 0.5. You add that on top of it. So whatever your vacuum reading is, you split it in half. That's the properly sized power valve for your carburetor, for your engine. And if you still have a bog and your timing is where it needs to be, because if you got slow timing, it's always going to have a bog. But anyway, the next thing you would do is your squirter right there that takes that Phillips screw right there. You'll take that squirter out and you'll replace that with a bigger one. They usually come with like a 31 in them. You'll increase the squirter size. Now what I do, this is how I do it. And people argue, and I don't give a crap. I've done it for 20 or 30 years this way. I use an index drill bit. This is a little cheap set, $3 from like Harbor Freight. I will find the drill bit that actually fits in that squirter holes. There's 2 of them, one on each side. I find the one that actually fits that perfectly. I'll use the next size bigger and I'll drill it out. I'll screw it back on there and I'll take the car out, take my foot off the brake and smash the gas. If I still have a bog, I will take it back off and I will drill it the next size bigger. And I will go until it goes away. But obviously, once you go too far, you can't go back. But I always have a whole bunch of these squirters laying around, so it doesn't matter to me to drill them out. And other guys will argue that you're not supposed to drill jets, you're not supposed to drill those squirters and all this crap. They don't get cast with the holes in them. They're drilled, I promise you. So, of course, when you drill something, there's going to be flash. So just make sure the flash is cleaned off. You know, look at it real close, magnifying glass or whatever. Make sure it's clear. But anyway, that will take the bog out of your Holley. But that sizing that power valve is the most important thing. That has to be sized to your engine. Every engine's different. You know, older engines are going to have leaking valves, so it's not going to have, you know, proper vacuum and all that crap. So anyway, do yourself a favor and spend the 10 or 15 bucks on a gauge. You're not a badass by listening to it with your ears, because anybody can do it. But you got to think of it as like old motorcycles or any motorcycle with carburetors. You know, a 4-cylinder like a KZ1000. Those carbs have to be synced perfectly together for that motorcycle to run correctly. And it's pretty much the same deal. You have to have these reading the same exact measurement on inches. Exact same one. Because one bank your engine's going to be a little leaner than the other if you don't. You know what I mean? Or rich. You know, you get what I'm saying. The other thing I don't like about Edelbrocks, this is one of the big things for me. The linkage, there's no spring on it. Holley has a spring right there. So this has a little bit of spring back to it. These have nothing. So I have always had to put a little bit tighter spring on my throttle pedal to get this to work, because you'll have, you know, like a medium tension spring on it or something, and you'll rev the car up and then the idle won't come down where it needs to be. And you can come out and touch this, push it down a little bit, and then the idle will go down where it needs to be. So your spring always has to be pretty tight for these to work right. And I don't like a super stiff accelerator pedal. So that's the other thing about a Holley that I like. Anyway, it's just a simple deal to tune one of these. But anyway, I will say, if you're dead set on an Edelbrock style carburetor, if you don't have a whole lot of tuning experience, I will tell you right now, this carburetor right here, I have experience with it. This is the Demon that looks just like an AFB carburetor. But anyway, the one I bought was a 625, and it's polymer, and it's 327 bucks. When I bought mine from Summit and I put it on an El Camino it was a stock Goodwrench 350. I bought that carburetor brand new from Summit, and at that time it was 299 bucks, and I was like, I'm buying that. It was inexpensive. You know, now it's another 35 bucks, but anyway, I was super impressed with that carburetor. It is a redesign. It looks like it, but it is redesigned, and it has that plastic main body, so you can run ethanol fuel in it. You don't have to worry about fuel boil. And that's the other thing. If you're going to run either one of these carburetors and you're going to put ethanol fuel in your car, ethanol-based, you know, unleaded, you need a phenolic or plastic carb spacer. You will end up with fuel boil. You'll drive the car and it may shut off going down the road, or it'll be hard to start after you drive it somewhere and shut it off. You'll get back in it to start it and it's all flooded out. The fuel will be boiling out of here because your fuel is heated up from that ethanol. Ethanol has a lower boiling point, so it causes an issue. So if you buy a carb spacer, a plastic one or phenolic, it will stop it immediately. This one's pretty big. I like to get like the little 1/2-inch ones. But I do like the phenolic, but they're about 30 bucks from Summit. A friend of mine gave me this plastic one. It's pretty tall, but you know, it's here. I'll probably use it because it's free. But anyway, so I just prefer that Holley, especially if you got a cam in your car. You're going to hear more of a cam. It's going to sound a little deeper because of the 4-corner idle system. But do yourself a favor and buy that damn gauge. Don't be a a big head about it like you're the best carb tuner in the world, because you're not. I will say on these Edelbrocks, I have noticed this, and Holleys, you'll get this little rubber vacuum cap in the box, you know, and you may have a port that you're not going to use, and you'll stick that on there. Now, the problem is, I have noticed, I've actually seen this quite a bit, even if it's a brand new carburetor, like a year or 2 years in, these things will start getting cracks or splits in them, and then you'll notice your carburetor's run, or your engine's running funny. Check your vacuum caps, because these little rubber ones do not have a very long life. I always change them out to this plastic rubbery style. I get them in a multi-pack, a little clear plastic pack at O'Reilly's. There's blue, yellow, red. I think there's another color I can't remember, but these seem to hold out a little bit longer. You know, none of them really last forever. These will end up getting super hard, but these do last a little bit longer than the little rubber ones. So keep that in mind. What else? I don't know that there's much more I can cover. I'm just giving you the basics. Now, again, I'm not trying to start a debate with you. This is personal experience I have with both of these carburetors. You know, in my opinion, the guys that don't have much carburetor tuning experience, that's probably the carburetor for you, or that demon like that, because they're pretty much the only two adjustments is right here. But they've always run a little fat for me at idle, even on stock engines. So it won't be enough to melt your eyes right there in the garage while it's sitting there idling. It'll be, you know, you'll notice after a little bit of driving, it'll start getting a little bit of a mist to it, and you'll pull a plug and they'll be a little black. So, you know, the carburetor companies, they like to have them carburetors a little fat so they don't melt your engine down. So, you know, the Edelbrock or Demon, be prepared if you're going to tone it down. You're going to spend 70 or 80 bucks on this kit right here. So, and it may be more money than that. I haven't had one in a while. I prefer the Holley because I always have Holley parts and pieces laying around. I have a huge jet pack, and, you know, just that way. But, you know, if you're going to do your vacuum gauge on your engine, if you have an automatic, you know, put it in gear, have somebody hold their foot on the brake while you read the vacuum gauge. If you have a standard transmission, it's just whatever it's reading sitting there. So, pretty basic, guys. Again, that's pretty much a simple little rundown and a common fix for the Holley bog, or, you know, that you usually have. But I can always get one of these dialed in pretty quickly. Take your foot off the brake and smash it to the floor, and then just annihilate the tires. So, you know, but you got to have a vacuum gauge to do that. Anyway, a little 600's done. I'm going to wrap it up in a towel and put it in a box and stick it on the shelf. This thing is, when my parts come in, I'll put the stuff in it, and it will be ready to rock. Thanks for watching.